First thing we want to talk about is managing unknown contacts. We always cover that because that is the initial contact. Usually we'll talk about in jiu-jitsu, different classes like that, we'll talk about how every fight starts on the feet, unless you're fighting in a taxi or an Uber or something. But for the most part, you're going to be on your feet when you get it on, hopefully, right? Most contacts begin verbal. Most contacts are going to begin with a verbal component where you are learning how to deal with somebody, how to de-escalate. You want to avoid, deter, and de-escalate, correct? So ADD. Most of the time when you do make contact with somebody, there is a innate thing, or there is a thing inside of us that lets us know something's not right, correct? Like most of us have just this instinctual thing where our body just kind of like your spidey sense, whatever you want to call it, it starts going nuts. Like this situation's not good. This person's not good. There are just things about this that are just not feeling right. How many have kids? How many have ever had your kid not want to hug somebody, be around somebody? Could be a relative, could be just anybody, where you're just like, hey, give them a hug, whatever, and the kids are just like, mm-mm. Right? Why is that? Their instincts are telling them, like, something's not kosher here. There might be nothing wrong with this person, but there also might be something going on there that our kids pick up on because they haven't had enough conditioning yet. They haven't had enough people tell them, listen, you're prettier when you smile. You're nicer when you smile, right? Give them a hug. Just hug them anyway, right? They haven't had enough people beat that into their head where they've learned to just override their gut instinct and just go with it. So what we want to do a little bit of is tap back into that. Now, I'm not trying to tell you guys to walk around being a scaredy cat, but unless you're a cop or a firefighter or an EMT, you really don't have any reason to ignore and override your gut instincts, right? If you're a military person or you're a first responder, your profession is to override gut instinct. You can't just, like a firefighter can't be like, man, that fire looks bad. Probably should stay out of there. Like you just can't do that. That's not your job. But a normal person, we instinctively know, right? Fire's bad. Ancestors drowned in water, and if they fell off a cliff, they died, right? So heights are bad. Fire is bad, right? Dark spaces hold predators. Those are bad. All those things that are instinctive that we learn to just override over time. I want you guys to just start paying attention to those now. Learn how to pay attention to that stuff again. To some degree, it's trying to tell you something. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution invested in you, right? Your DNA, it's proven that our DNA carries codes that our ancestors tried to pass down to us. If you're alive and you're here right now, your ancestors were smart enough to run when they should and fight when they have to. So the thing is that if you're here, those lessons have been handed down. You just need to learn to pay attention to them. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right, right? Something feels off about some person, don't second guess yourself. Pay attention to it. If you got to work with them or you have to be in a situation where you have to be around them, okay, but just note that. Right? Like there's something not right about this person and I'm just not going to let them in my circle. Make sense? All right. So having said all that, we want to avoid certain things. And usually we go by the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, why, right? So first off, who? If it's somebody I don't know, typically it's going to be somebody you know in a self-defense situation. It's just statistically, that's where it's at. Numbers don't lie, right? So it'll typically be somebody that you know. If it's someone that you don't know, then it's typically going to be a male between the ages of 16 and 25. That's when we're most violent, right? We've got thousands of mgs of testosterone pumping through our system every day, and we're just a hormonal rage, and we don't know what to do with it, So that's typically going to be the problem for most folks, okay, if it's an unknown. And when does this happen? Well, if it's a known person, then only you are going to know when it's going to happen. You know the patterns. You know how it works, right? If it's an unknown, then it's typically going to be after 10 p.m., right? Between 10 and 3, 10 p.m., 3 a.m., that's typically when bad things happen. Unless you're in a gang, unless you guys are out here gang banging or something, which I don't think you guys are, but you never know, But if you're out here gang banging, then yeah, any hour of the day you could be subject to a hit. But for the most part, most of us out here just working a 9 to 5, living our life, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., that's where most issues are going to occur as far as random violence with people we don't know. All right? And then why? Why is probably the most important, right? Why is always the most important question. You know, why do you train? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why do crimes happen? Why does violence occur, right? Typically for just 3 reasons, all right? So there's social status, social dominance, right? That's 2 guys chesting up in a bar. You know, why are they going to fight? Just because they got to show dominance, all right? The other reason would be because of acquisition. If you think about it, historically, why does one tribe attack another tribe? Acquisition. You have resources that I want. You have things that I want. Best way for me to get them is take them. So you have something nice and shiny, you have a car, you have whatever it might be, and they want to take it from you. And if something happens in the process of them taking it, then violence might occur. And then the third, which is the least common, is a true sociopath. They like to hurt people just to hurt people. That's 1% of the population, statistically, and most of them are locked up because they can't control their urge to hurt people, and so they get locked up. So you're never going to have to deal with them. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Give you guys a couple things, and then we're going to work through how to manage an unknown contact. First things first, if you don't know them, here we're going to deal with that part, then we're going to deal with known. If I don't know you, do I need to have a conversation with you? You approach me in a parking lot of a shopping center or a grocery store. I see this all the time. Approach me in a parking lot of a grocery store, and you're like, hey, let me help you load your groceries in the car. And I say, no, thank you. And you say, just let me help you. What just happened? What did they just disregard? It's very important. What was it? Boundaries. I just said no, and you just said, fuck your no. Is that a good sign? Is that a good person? Is that a dude that's just down on his luck and just needs $1? Or is that a dude who's like, I'm going to take what I want from you if you don't give it? I don't want to find out. When presented with the word no, they ignored it. And that's your first clue. That's your first sign something's going to go wrong. When they ignore no, that's it. Because how else am I going to make contact with you? How else am I going to get close enough to you? One of my friends, I teach shooting classes with Mickey Shook, a carry trainer. And he just shared a clip 2 days ago where a kid's walking across the parking lot trying to get to the bus stop. Another guy intercepts him, and we're not really sure what happens, but he begins a conversation. You can see at about social distance, about 6 feet, he begins this conversation, which allows him to walk up and put his hand on the guy's shoulder. And as soon as he touches the guy's shoulder, you can see that kid's like, oh shit. And he starts to pull away, and then it's on. And so what do they need to, they can't, like, if I wanted to just, so if Jill's standing and I wanted to just take her stuff, you know, wouldn't I just walk up and be like, crack, and take her stuff? Yeah, we're going to deal with that too. But what we want to first deal with is the person who tries to get you to let your guard down so that my buddy over here can do the cracking. Right? So that my buddy over here can make the movement that's going to ultimately get what we want from you. People are talking about the difference between what we do and what other self-defense people do regarding kind of the BS meter and legitimacy. It gets a little murky because you have this kind of credential war. So you have this guy was in this unit and did this in this environment, and so therefore his opinion is more valid than anyone else's. And then you have this guy over here, and you get into all this other stuff. And what I look at is I look at their student base, and I look at my student base. And so if I have someone coming to me that's a nurse, or I have someone coming to me that's a mom, what applied for me as part of a SWAT team going into a house with 25 other guys, or on a barricaded subject call or something like that with 25 other guys, has little to no bearing on a mom of 2 walking her kids to the car in a Target parking lot at 11 at night or 10 at night or whatever it might be. No bearing whatsoever. She can't call for air support. She can't call for, more units. She's on her own. And so when people fail to address those issues, they miss the very picture we're trying to paint. They miss the very person we're trying to talk to, the person that needs it most. In the context of a 2-day course, our best bet is to prepare people for probabilities rather than possibilities, while encouraging them to train in jiu-jitsu, in combat sports, and deepen their knowledge so that when possibilities do come up, it's easy to solve. But for right now, most people, their biggest problem is going to be the guy that confronts them in a parking lot over a parking space, or the person who is getting a little too close to their child, or maybe taking pictures of their child without their knowledge for whatever purpose. That kind of thing happens. And so how do you address that? Those are the things that they should be worried about, not 15 guys in ninja masks, coming through their door in the middle of the night, some sort of crazy home invasion situation or whatever. They should be worried about reality. Reality is not what some self-defense people would have us believe it is. I don't know what fear-based model they're using, but reality is more of the everyday person that they have contact with. Learn how to stand up to them, and also maybe the person at school who cuts in line with their child, like preparing their child to deal with that. Those are the type of things we focus on.